I've got the char sum from the upgrade MD, unsafe reset, and started my node, and it just goes straight to Genesis time in the future sleeping.
That's really weird. You want to share screen?
Yeah, sure. You fucking prick.
It's amazing how... I don't know. That was pretty good. You're on mute.
He's got mute on. He's like...
Beautiful. Well, that was about as professional as usual then.
That was amazing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Game of Nodes, an increasingly non-weekly podcast on the Cosmos from independent validator nodes. You've been enjoying a quite serious bit of payback that I just delivered. And what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about the Juno upgrade, right?
Yeah, well...
We are.
I think I'm actually pushing Al a bit too far this time. So, we're live streaming the update that's happening at the moment, and of course, like one of the big things that I'm sure anybody who's been on Twitter has noticed is that there are a bunch of validators stuck running invariant checks. Which is going to be fun to see what happens when we get to 9 o'clock, because I think we have 10, 15 or more validators currently stuck at the distribution / can withdraw invariant check. I don't know, Usurper and Todd, are you running invariants, or are you running without them?
I'm stuck. Yeah.
Yeah. How long have you been stuck?
45 minutes, almost an hour.
Devastating. I heard Demi has been stuck for 2.5 hours and counting.
Yeah. I have 3 nodes that are all processing. Main validator's been going for 2 hours exactly, and I have a seed node that's up in the cloud somewhere, and that one's been going for 2.5 hours.
That's 2.5 hours. That's devastating. Again,
it's concerning. Yeah,
we need to do like a sweepstakes in the validator chat for like who's been running the longest on this one.
Closest, but without going over.
Yeah, there's a lot of memes on there. But yeah, so we figured we've got 9 minutes to go, and I think in reality as well there'll be potentially a little bit of a wait. So we'll also do some questions and we'll do some stuff from the chat. We've obviously got Todd as well here today, the excellent Block Pane. And so we've had quite a few questions about general validation and stuff over the episode. So maybe we'll put a couple of those questions around and get some answers from everybody, including Todd. Lavender's not here today. Schultze is not here today because there has been a fire at a power station near him, and he's been tethered to his phone all day doing the upgrade and has burnt through all his phone battery and presumably all his laptop battery and is now sitting in the dark, I guess. So his apologies as well on that one. And then we've got quite a few things on the potential list of things to talk about. So, but of course, the main event is that we have got 8 minutes until nominally we reach the upgrade time for Juno to restart. So maybe a bit of background here for people who are maybe wondering what's actually going on. I think we talked about it the episode yesterday, but what is actually about to happen, Usurper?
Well, right now, nothing's happening. No, what is about to happen is that, well, to back up a bit, I think when we talked about it from last night, we have a new Genesis file, which is a pretty beefy boy that has a significant amount of history associated to it. And I think that validator processes are attempting to chug through that to be ready There is a start time that's within that validator file, which does start in 7 minutes from now at 2100 UTC, which basically means that no nodes will start to try to, communicate out or process or be able to create connections within themselves to be able to start the process. That does not happen for another 7 minutes. But there is, we can talk about these checks that are going on here within that. But once that happens, then these nodes, if they are past this invariant check, or if validators have chosen to skip that, will start to communicate out, and they will attempt to make connections and try to do some pre-votes and get to a point where 67% of the voting power has agreed that we're all on the same page, and we go from there. Now, what will actually happen, I guess, is that there's a significant percentage of this voting power that's not going to be ready in 7 minutes. And even now, I think the sad part is, I think it's what I have heard is that even if that we skip these invariant checks, that processing can still take a good half an hour to get moving. So just chugging through this Genesis file, at least we had some stories of that. So we might be waiting here for a little bit.
Yeah, I think it seems like quite random almost, doesn't it? Because we've heard people who have been running 128 gig RAM who have got through in 20 minutes, and we've heard people who are on 64, even less, getting through in only 30 minutes. So it seems like it's because it's the invariant checks process is bound by one core, and most modern computing rigs, even obviously servers among them, are kind of optimized for multi-core and a lot of RAM. And in reality, it turns out that this process seems to be mainly using about 4 to 6 gig of RAM, but hammering one of the CPUs. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really a hardware guy or a low-level guy, so I'm sure somebody, probably Usurper or Todd, will have more thoughts on that, what's going on.
Yeah, I was just trying to go back to these. Yeah, I think you called it, though. I mean, it is one core that is being hammered here, and it just kind of bounces around based on threads that are starting and stopping. It isn't a lot of RAM usage and those types of things. So I would assume that and the ones that I'm running on here, like, these are validators, not that. It's a couple gen old Xeon, so it's not great single thread, but the one node I have in the cloud is a 5950X, which is really the fastest single thread CPU that exists, maybe outside of the Intel 1200 series. So if that thing's taken 2 hours, then I don't know if there's much hope for this process.
Yeah, and there's no IO here either.
I'm watching that too. Yeah,
just spinning.
So I guess I don't know if there's any. Todd, do you know if you could actually see if it's doing anything?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting question, I guess, because there obviously have been other chains that have started using a similar, a similar thing from a point with a large genesis. But I do wonder if, like, this is the largest genesis maybe that anybody's started with yet. We can probably blow up Todd's screen, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, no IO at all.
Yeah.
I've just made null really big, but not Todd, and I'm trying to work out how oh, there we go.
There we go.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just see it hit that one core, and then
goes to the next one.
Yeah, you can see straight there, even with potentially YouTube quality, how one core is getting hit, and it's quite static apart from that.
Yeah. So it's doing something, I guess. But you're right. There's no IO there, so I'm not sure if it's going to get through this process or not.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see just how long it takes, to be honest. Because I mean, this is the thing we were thinking earlier. Is like, generally speaking, the invariant checks take place at Genesis, right? And we're effectively restarting a chain with a really large user base, with smart contracts, with lots and lots of state. I mean, so people in the validator set will know that we had quite a lot of work sorting out the Genesis today, and also verifying it. It was quite tricky because the file was so large; it was very hard to actually check that everything we expected to be in the Genesis file was there. Like, we're talking about a 1 gigabyte text file, which is huge, right? And then we've got a single threaded process that's attempting to just chew its way through it and then come to a conclusion about its validity, essentially. It's fair to say that this process probably wasn't thought of as, having to ever really deal with a genesis that big, right? So maybe it's unusual based on the situation we're in. So I guess I wonder what is the point at which you call it and say, should we be all running without invariant checks on?
Right.
Because the other thing I guess I don't fully understand is what happens if 67% of voting power gets through with invariant checks or without invariant checks. What happens then? Incidentally, we are 30 seconds away from potential chain launch. So does anybody have a terminal up to see whether Visor connects? Oh, wait.
Well, I do, but I didn't go through invariant checks, so I don't know why. I can't get it to go through invariant checks.
The only thing I can show is just network traffic to my tender seed.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Right.
I'm kind of wondering whether we're about to see some, proverbial serious shit, or whether we're going to see blocks or not.
I would highly doubt that we're going to see blocks.
Yeah, we've got latest polls 17 people on invariant checks. I think everybody who's stuck on invariant checks is stuck on can withdraw. 18 validators of various sizes. Some of the bigger validators are running invariant checks, so that probably means the voting power is disproportionately big, I think.
I don't know what this poll is on Discord though. There's skull and crossbones and X's.
Yeah, I don't know what the skull and crossbones means.
Those the same thing?
22 stuck in invariant checks. Oh, and I haven't clicked it yet either. So yeah, 23.
Yeah. So there's one. I guess Stixito said that they did finish it. I assume that means they had finished it with invariant checks, I would assume.
I hope so.
Maybe. And an eggplant.
Yeah, I guess unless they turned it off.
Yeah.
We're about to see.
But I am seeing people hit the seed node now. So.
Oh, that's good.
Nice.
Zero base is 21%. I'm honestly shocked that that's at that high. I guess these non-validator nodes I should just rerun without invariant checks. There's no reason to.
Yeah, like the sentries.
Yeah.
21% of voting power online, apparently.
Yeah, that's shocking.
That's not bad. I mean, but it's probably all the people who skipped invariant checks.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I would assume.
Doesn't necessarily tell us that the Genesis is actually valid enough to run the network.
Right.
Found out what my problem was.
What was it?
It's going to be on the dumbest shit on crypto this week.
Do you want to save it?
You could share it now. You're amongst friends and 162 stream viewers.
This, actually, could be interesting for anyone else who's having the same problem. I had config set for state sync, and that seems to have done something.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess if it's a block, but the block would have been in the past, right? So it wouldn't have done that, would it?
Well,
that's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm just restarting it now and see if it's any different.
I don't think that is the dumbest thing, because I mean I've had nodes that have had state sync data in there, even though they've been state synced in the past, right? It just holds on to that, but I think it's because the current block is ahead of that number, I would assume. But I guess in this situation with the Genesis, but the block is ahead, it must still try to look for that. That's interesting.
Apparently still at 21%, so I think that tells you, 31 validators are stuck at last count on almost entirely the same invariant check. Oof, yeah. I think might be one of the longest running sticks usurper.
That might be. Yeah, it's going on. Actually, it's really 2 hours and 45 minutes. I start at 9:21 p.m. UTC. Or I'm sorry, not UTC. This is, what the heck? I don't even know what the hell time zone this thing is in.
Are those numbers good or bad? Well, so we need 66%, 67% of voting power to get the network back online. And at the moment there is 21%, but probably a lot of the voting power that is online at the moment, and what you're seeing going through Todd's seed node, the validators that are coming online have done a thing called skipping invariants, which means that they've essentially skipped a bunch of checks that ensure the consistency of the Genesis file we're running, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the question is whether or not, if you skip invariants, there's potentially there could be a problem down the line with the validity of the thing you're running. So ideally, all the validators should run the invariant checks, but at the very least, a lot of the validators should be running the invariant checks. So what we've seen is at least 21% of voting power has either not run the invariant checks, which is fine because it's not a majority, or they've already got through the invariant checks and their validators are coming online. What you're seeing on the screen, Todd's running what's called a seed node, and it's basically the kind of how would somebody more eloquent than me describe a seed node?
It's like a phone book.
A phone,
yeah.
Right?
It's an operator that holds a phone book that people call up, and it says, "Here's 10 numbers. Go dial these 10 numbers," and it hangs up.
And the reason this node is up is because it's a lightweight seed, so it doesn't actually store the full blockchain. It just handles the P2P exchanges. It's called Tinder seed. Super useful.
Super useful.
Yeah. So Todd's basically running the command and control infrastructure for us getting this up, if you like. And so what you're seeing is nodes that are currently online asking for who they should connect to in order to then take the network, peer with each other, and then move on. So that's what we're seeing, and yeah, that's good because it means that there is now traffic going through the network, but we've not yet achieved consensus.
Yeah, this is probably the same nodes, just redialing, looking for more peers to get over, right, to fill their own peer books, because these peers, if folks don't know, these peers have a kind of a target in terms of number of inbound connections that it wants to receive and a number of outbounds it wants to dial. And if those are not full, it will continue to try to build the address book to do so. And so one of the ways it does that is to keep dialing the seed nodes and say, "Give me more names, give me more names, give me more names." That's probably partially what's happening here on Todd's side.
Exactly, yeah.
And they're not getting them because everyone is stuck in invariant checks.
That's right.
Can they?
Yeah.
I'm not sure they can still dial when you're in invariant checks either. So if they're trying to dial peers,
yeah, it's doing nothing.
Yeah, it's just process. It's just whatever sitting here.
Yeah. So there's several chat windows going on. There's obviously a validators chat that's very heavy on memes that are, let's say, based around the invariant checks not completing, and then there's also various coordination channels. The general consensus is crack a beer and wait because it's going to take a little while. So cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, so I'm going through without skipping, so I'm probably a good few hours off. But I think it's better to do that than to skip them. So
better be safe than sorry. I mean, maybe you'll be done by the time I get up tomorrow.
Well, it's actually seems to be. I don't know what the big one is, but it seems to be going.
Oh,
okay,
you'll see it.
Up to 4 of 11.
Are you on cam withdraw yet?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to it.
You're here for a while. Yeah.
One of my processes is just pegged, and that's it.
Yeah. Yep.
So apparently, somebody from another network who have run a large restart like this, they said, can take up to wait for it 4 hours.
Yeah, I was going to ask. This might be a Jack question because I think he was involved, I believe. Maybe one of you guys were as well. But I know this happened on Atom a few times, right? With Atom 2, 3, and 4, etc. And I think I'm guessing those Genesises were pretty large, similar type structure.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that, yeah, some of the people that have been around for a little bit longer in the eco maybe don't seem to be as surprised by the length of time it's taking. And one of the things that Jack was saying earlier, actually, on the team chat, was that there are a number of different things in the Cosmos SDK, which is like sort of the underlying engine that we're all kind of running on in Cosmos,
right?
Where, you know, the effort in coding was getting it out the door and then getting live chains working, getting IBC working, you know, getting user-facing features shifted over necessarily making every single sharp edge smooth, right? And the one of the many things that might include is things like invariant checks, which, you know, they don't seem like they're not the biggest priority on the table, are they, at the best of times, until you end up in a situation like this where it becomes a particularly burning issue. But, you know, it's not something you can necessarily predict ahead of time. I've got some validators in the chat as well. Got community staking there.
Nice.
That's the one, the can withdraw check of doom. And would you mind giving an overview of what checking invariance means? It's basically simply checking the validity of the Genesis file, isn't it, against the various modules in the SDK, right? Everybody's streaming HTOP. That's right. I've actually is what I've got open in the other window as well.
Yeah, I actually have BTOP running, so I'm different.
You are a unique, special snowflake, Noel.
Yeah.
So, do we want to do some questions and things while we're waiting for this guy to unstick?
Yeah, we could probably pick up, you know, some of the stuff that we missed out on the actual podcast yesterday because we just got stuck talking about one thing all day.
Got a bit overexcited about it all, didn't we?
Oh my God, I love people just jump in the chat every time and they're like, "Where's Jack? Get Jack. Bring Jack."
Hey, can you unmaximize my screen here?
Oh yeah, sure. Hang on. Happy days. So one of the things we got asked about several times is like, what does our technical background have to be in order to be validators? So when Juno. So I kind of like, and there's actually we got some really interesting questions as well about, like, I guess, centralization of power in terms of like highly professionalized validators as well. And I think maybe it'd be quite interesting to actually tackle that one first, because there's been, you know, things recently with highly professionalized validator operations that are running on multiple chains, then getting bought out by, you know, like third-party companies, if you like, who are seeking to acquire them as almost like an investment. So I don't know if we have some thoughts about that in terms of, you know, how beneficial it is or otherwise to have a sort of percentage of voting power in these highly centralized, professionalized, if you like, validator operations versus like the benefit of having like a completely wide validator set.
So, was that a question?
Yeah,
I think. I only picked up half of what you said because I was reading other things while you were talking. But so yeah, sorry. The benefits of so yeah, I think you need the big you know, investor-backed guys. Like, they bring a lot to the table. They've got a lot of hardware. They generally run you know, big infrastructure for the network as well, like RPC clusters and infrastructure like that. But you need your independence. Like, independents pretty much are the heart and soul of all of the community, and getting some more diversity rather than just having a bunch of big players that dominate all of the blockchains. And there should be, it's like a decentralized environment. There should be like room for new people to come and learn and pick up skills that they didn't have before, potentially make a bit of money. I don't think it should be an environment where we just lock people out because they don't particularly have, the required background. Everybody can learn. Everyone starts somewhere, and it's not the type of thing where you need to have, a university background in infrastructure security and stuff. Like, everything can be learned. It just takes a little bit of time, persistence, and help from the community, which is what we try to do a lot. I think everybody here is probably a big hand to the newcomers. A lot of us give a leg up to people who are looking for help in our Discord channels on the various networks. And I think that's important. And I think that's a big step towards decentralization, if that's what the goal is in various networks.
Yeah.
People just want to know how many percent.
So,
if my node were ready, I've actually got this. Oh, hold on. This prepped to watch consensus state in real time, but I'm processing invariants.
Yeah. So it's very, very easy to see the voting power when you're in the position that you're essentially trying to connect to peers. When you're still processing invariants, you're not dialing peers. So, and even if we were, we'd be showing you the command line, telling you what decimal between obviously 0 and 1 it is. At the moment, it is 0.22, I gather. So it's gone up by 1% since we last revealed the number.
and 0.22 is 22%.
Yeah. This is like one of those, those run up to New Year's Eve type scenarios, isn't it? Where it's like you start at 0% and then eventually Usurper and the Fray drink enough whiskey that it's redundant whether or not we've made consensus or not. Yeah, it seems like people are getting out the popcorn in the validator chat as well. I think we still haven't got a single validator past the invariant checks yet.
Nope, I'm still ready.
So I mean, we don't, but some people must, because if there's 22%, and it must be at least some of the, or at least one of the listed peers must be up from the repo, because otherwise there'd be no peer exchange. Oh, there's a seed, isn't there? Who's running the seed? Is that
Todd's running the seed.
Todd, you are Todd.
Yeah.
We were literally looking at his logs a minute ago, dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was looking over here. But so definitely giving the box a hard time on just one CPU.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we've had another few questions about invariants. So invariants, basically they're checking the validity of the Genesis file against the various modules in the SDK. The reason it's taking so long is because Juno is a live network and there are a lot of accounts and a lot of state in the Genesis file, like probably way more than you would normally have for a network just starting. So it's taking a long time because it's not really a situation that was envisaged was, I guess, starting with this much state as the start of a new network, if you like. So yeah, that's what invariants are. It's basically a security check that what we're about to run is okay. You can skip it, but if everybody skipped it, you could potentially wind up with trouble down the line. So it's better, ideally, I suppose, if you don't skip it, but not, as I gather, fully essential that everybody not skip it. Next block will be this. So what's happening is we're actually skipping a block forward. So the first block will be 99. Will there be, and so there won't be a fuck ton of transactions because the ones containing the previous block won't be there. but there will be, because people will be like, let's fucking go the second it goes live, and probably because some people will be trying to take advantage of arbitrage, right?
Here's an important question.
Oh, right. Yeah, so some of the people on this chat have actually worked on the Genesis for this upgrade. The answer to this is that you export the state from the old Juno, so pre the crash. So
And the state, is the current account balances, validator, balances, staking balances, all that type of stuff.
So the complete history of the chain, essentially, like at that moment in time, you export that at the point the chain stopped, and then you create a new Genesis file, which basically removes the problem things and moves us forward a block and changes the time and all these sorts of things we've had to do over the last 48 hours. And then you compare those two files, right? And the only things you should see changed are the things you needed to change to launch the network again, right? So if me and Null, let's say, had like gone in that Genesis file and created like 10 gigawhales, just like found random addresses and given them 10 billion Juno, and then altered the Juno supply to push it all up and make it valid, right? What would basically checking that file against the previous one, diffing it, would reveal that the only changes in it were that we'd been messing around with it, right? So it's up to validators to check that file before they run it. And also the core team, and also people around the core team, some of the security folks that have been helping with the upgrade, diffed the various things that were being proposed just to ensure that nobody on the core team was playing, runabout with the numbers, essentially. I mean, I guess we probably nobody would, because they have no incentive to, and they know they get caught, but you got to check, right? But I suppose ultimately responsibility does lie with validators to some extent, right?
Yeah, like, as a decentralized thing, people should be checking. So if you're a validator and you're interested and you want to make sure that your network's not being tampered with, you should go and do it yourself and do a diff between the two Genesises and check Genesis. There's instructions on how to do it, and you can read the bash and you can see the steps that it goes through to generate the Genesis. So that if you can read bash, then you should be able to see that there's no messing around with creating that from that script, and then you can compare them and see that there's been no accounts added or anything like that. And we talked through this last night. My last night, this morning, the Frey, when we were looking at that Genesis file.
Yeah. So no, not quite. So that what we're talking about right now is checking that the state of the chain hasn't been changed between the chain halting and the chain starting. So the invariant checks are that, for example, every account balance in Juno, when you add them all together, they add up to the total supply. That's like an invariant check, right? It's that kind of stuff, like the integrity. So if you did mess around with things and then nobody ran invariant checks, then there's a chance you could end up in a kind of balked state, I guess. And
I'm just going to put it out there. Probably 3 of these 4 hours is because of all those bloody bots doing the staking of 0.0001 Juno.
You mean the micro whale?
The micro whale.
The micro whale.
My favorite conspiracy theory. It's only a matter of time before the micro whale comes back around. How does relaunch of network and upgrade go hand in hand? Does somebody want to take that and explain it?
How does the okay, so because we were halted, and the fix was within the upgrade that was planned, we've rolled the upgrade with some other security security fixes into a new binary. And so we've brought it forward and removed the chain halt that was planned for, how do you say that upgrade name?
Lupercalia.
Lupercalia, that's it. So the planned upgrade's been removed basically from this Genesis. It's been changed from an upgrade proposal to a text proposal so that the chain won't halt and then try to revert back to an older binary, which was version 2.3 for Lupercalia. And so we've upgraded now to 3.0, which includes what was in 2.3 plus some security updates, and brought that forward so that the contract that halted us in the first place can't be re-executed. That's probably about the extent of it, I would say, unless anyone else has anything to add there.
I think it covers it.
Yeah.
Now there were 3 CosmWasm vulnerabilities that we were exposed to. This fixes all 3. So
yeah, so Jack just said, yeah, the hack won't work on the upgraded binary, and we've tested it.
So there's 11 different invariant checks, and just going through the channel, it looks like each node kind of runs those in a random order. They're not always like the same 11 in the same order. And the other 10, there's success on all of those 10, meaning like at some point each one of those has gone through and about a node has completed that check. The one that everybody's kind of waiting on is this invariant check called can withdraw. So that seems to be the one that's the only problem, I guess, out of these 11 within these checks, or at least one, maybe not a problem, just one that takes the longest. And then Jabby went back and looked and said that the can withdraw tries to withdraw every commission and reward from every validator and delegator and make sure that nothing is left over. So nothing's modified, but it kind of, I think, maybe reruns that transaction to, not reruns the transaction, runs the transaction or checks the cache to make sure that it's accurate and things like that. So every validator, delegator on every withdraw, I could see taking a little bit of time on a single core process.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing. So somebody asked earlier, like, again, how do you know that somebody hasn't messed around with the file?
Mm-hmm.
This is how, we didn't, while the chain was stopped, nobody just added in another 10,000 Juno delegations themselves, let's say, on the core team or around the core team or whatever. It's all part of like the tallying up of all these different numbers, but it does take ages, and it's certainly in this case taking a lot longer than anticipated. We'd sort of figured that it would take at most an hour or two. If you've restarted a node on a live Cosmos network that's got a reasonable amount of state, it can often take sort of like 20-30 minutes at least, maybe. So it's not what's it called, not new thing. Are you throwing up some memes, Usurper? Is that what that is?
Yeah, I'm collecting them off the channel. So everybody's who's in the validator channel on Juno, just keep them coming. I forget who posted this one. I like this one.
We love memes.
That's a good one. This one.
I think the
Celeron shitbox or a 432 core Ryzen, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that Polka
awesome.
pushed was great.
That one's right here.
Yeah. Devastatingly correct in this case.
Who does these? I love these memes.
That's
man.
Polka. This one is from Cleomedes. From Cleomedes team. That one's good. The first one, I don't remember. Oh, that's Highlander. Sorry, that's Highlanders.
Yeah. So I guess the question will be like, when one person has got through the invariant checks and we know that it's valid, there is then the question of whether validators that have not run the invariants, because so the other thing we've done to check the validity of the Genesis file is all validators have checked the hash of the same of the file to check it as the same file fundamentally, right?
Yeah.
So what you can do is once one passes the invariant checks and we know that we're all using the same Genesis file, you can potentially then stop, disable invariant checks, and then restart the nodes, which we know takes more like half an hour, right? As opposed to potentially several hours. So that would bring voting power on a lot more quickly. And particularly for those of us for whom it is not the morning or the middle of the day, would mean that we can go to bed at some point, rather than just staying up drinking indefinitely, which may be the case. So there have been a load of questions in the chat as well, actually.
One I just wanted to go back to there, Frey, was...
I feel like this is a very valid point. I like that. That's a good point.
That comment.
So this one, I think maybe a lot of people don't actually know what went on. So it might be good just to revisit, seeing as though we've got a pretty big audience watching. They can spread the word about what happened. And it had nothing to do with the whale that we know of.
So yeah, it had nothing to do with the whale, but it was... so essentially there was a vulnerability in CosmWasm that meant that you could call low-level ABCI queries in Tendermint. I'm going to, with my hands, which is not very good for a potential podcast version of this later, but underneath everything in Cosmos, there is Tendermint, which is the Byzantine fault-tolerant core that runs the blockchain. Then above that, there's the SDK, which is all the kind of the bank module, staking, distribution, all that sort of stuff that's the kind of actual meat and potatoes of running the chain. And then on top of that, there's Juno, which is like any of the custom code on top of all of that. So right down at the bottom there are a bunch of different query hooks and things you can do. And one of them is querying the nodes themselves. So what somebody did was, from a smart contract, the vulnerability was that you could query a node, so you could find out its name, and then you could write that to state. And then every single node writes a different value to state. And then the state of the chain is no longer in agreement. You have 125 forks. That's what happened. It was a known exploit, and that's what Lupercalia was patching. Except that somebody hit the exploit deliberately, probably about 6 hours before Lupercalia was released, which is pretty annoying. So that's what
very unfortunate timing.
Very, very unfortunate timing. Yes.
And for more detail, check out Game of Nodes episode 4, which we recorded last night. We talked about this a little bit in detail and kind of went through it a little bit. And
if you are interested in the details of that, I am reliably informed by one of the Confio team that it was informative enough that they used it to help them write the write-up on the vulnerability. So if you're interested, we go into it in quite a bit of detail with Jack, and also some of the various things that went on, like a SAFMO from Secret Network. Basically, we had an idea of what the vulnerability was, and he went and wrote a whole bunch of stuff to basically be able to execute it in a kind of a sandbox environment to see how it would behave, and actually prove that was the exploit, which was really cool. So big shout out to them for doing that. It's kind of elite tier collaboration there from the Secret Network guys. So
yeah, man, it just shows you how good like the Cosmos community is, that another network's like willing to jump in and get their hands dirty and help out when it's needed. Phenomenal.
Yeah, so we're at 32%, but so nobody's yet got past the crisis invariance. So quick update.
We're at what percent did you say?
32.
32.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Usurp. What were you saying?
I was just going to say we're at 32%. Yeah. Oh,
great minds think alike.
And this node still has not passed it. So I think I might be I'm not sure if this node is one of the longer ones that's been cranking on this, but this one has been going for, we just passed the 3 hour and 10-minute mark. So we'll see how it does.
Devastating. Yeah. Absolutely devastating.
I mean, like a progress bar would be nice.
A progress bar. I mean, yeah. I'm sure it's one of the high priority items on the list of invariant checks. Obviously,
exactly.
Every day we're validators. We're talking about invariant checks. We're like, what's up with these invariant checks? It's just like 9 to 5 invariant checks. Why won't devs do something? Can the devs do something?
How can we make this better for everybody who's all concerned about these daily invariant check issues?
Besides,
progress bar.
Yeah, progress bar just removes hope.
Yeah. You know, most progress bars, I mean, work by just having some arbitrary timeout, and then when they hit 95%, they just halt until the process is finished.
Or like the old Windows ones that would just keep going from 100 and go back to 0 and just keep starting over.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
one of those.
I'm pretty sure somebody I know worked at Adobe once, and they said that internally they called it Adobe maybe time.
Maybe.
Maybe it's like 95%, maybe no percent. Who knows? Got a question about the whale here. We did a whole thing about the whale and Prop 16 a while ago. Was that episode 3 or episode 2?
I think it's episode 2.
I think it's episode 2, so you can go back and check that out. But TLDR, CCN was an Estonian registered digital company that they were using. Clients who signed up with CCN were signing up with this Estonian company. That's who they signed the contract with. That's my understanding. So yeah, not shady at all. Totally cool. What happens if they hack?
Actually, yeah, that was number 2. Yeah.
Sorry, allegedly shady, I should say. Allegedly shady, not, whatever. What happens if they hack again? As Jake said in the chat, Lupercalia upgrade covers it. And as Null said, we're sneaking in some more upgrades with this one now, which means we're also covering off the Cosmwasm 0 day that was revealed yesterday in a security disclosure. So we got that upgrade in. That's now in the Juno binary as well. So, happy days. There you got a fan, Null.
Sorry, mate.
What
was that?
A couple more. Just either from Jabby.
It took me a second to get that, but yeah, okay. Like it.
Skipping right past that.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see. Yeah. Who will, the question is who will get there first, right? Because they're gonna be the real hero of the day.
And I guess and to your point, like if we have some valid checks that it doesn't have to be a validator node, right? It could be any node that gets past that check, and we can show some proof of that. Then people have a lot more comfortable and moving past it.
OpenB. This is a T-grade T-shirt. Unless right over here. Okay. What are the questions we got here?
We've got a lot of questions. I'm just scrolling through. What are you drinking, Usurper? Somebody asked.
Nothing right now. I usually have my bottle out, but it's a little bit early.
Imagine being in Juno for airdrops instead of tech.
What do you got there? Oh, that's nice.
Getting a lot of love for the Juno community.
Mm-hmm.
Not so many questions in the last little bit. Did you sleep well last night?
Right,
did you get yourself some sleep? I think you said you got a solid 7, right?
I got a solid 7. That's better than I've done for a few days. Feel like a new man. And can bad actors be stopped in the future? Yep, that's the name of the game. I think though, like for real, I think there's also a question, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday in terms of like, once we're through this upgrade, there's a whole bunch of stuff we need to do in terms of you basically doing root cause analysis and what happened here in terms of like we now know what caused the actual issue, but also in terms of like processes and how we can prevent it in the future, because the upgrade itself that would have prevented the chain halt had been ready in Juno's code base for about 30 days. And, obviously it's like extraordinary circumstances in terms of what was going on in that interim period. But yeah, it even despite the very extraordinary circumstances, there are things we could have done to like try and get together enough people to make sure it was tested and out and kind of make sure the priorities were squared away. But I think the other thing is, this has been an extraordinary time for Juno and for any blockchain really. Like a lot of what's happened will kind of go, I don't want to say go down in history because that sounds really lame, but like it will be what people reference as a precedent moving forward for both the governance stuff that we've gone through in the last month, but also like getting a very, very high profile cyber attack in this way. And, this kind of stuff is more likely, I suppose, on proof of stake blockchains, but proof of stake blockchains are a new technology. So we're one of the first chains that are getting hammered by this combination of factors at the moment. So it's going to be one of those things where people look back and go like, oh, it's like Juno, and it's like, and how Juno responds to it will be important in terms of like moving forward as well. Wallets were never at risk from the previous hack, and the question was, I should read these out because obviously it might be on the stream later. Can we be sure that our wallets will be more secure from now on? Wallets are never at risk. The vulnerability that involves wallets we've already patched, so that'll be going out with this upgrade. And even then, it was quite hard to exploit. So,
hang on, what happened here? Wouldn't it be better to implement urgent security patches without governance in the future?
I mean, that's kind of how we got into this situation a little bit, isn't it? 210 was a governance upgrade, but the patch on top of that was outside of governance, right? We just did it was a non-breaking change, so that was
that one was non-breaking. There.
It was a request to have validators update and those types of things. I think one of the things we're starting to learn is, I mean, this is as much of people as it is a technology challenge, because it's such a wide, diverse set of individuals and companies involved with different amounts of focus. And also you have, around the globe and things like that. So you kind of bring in natural rhythms into this as well in terms of who's up and who's around and those types of things. And as validators grow in terms of capability and automation, sometimes when there's maybe updates that occur outside of those automations, sometimes they can get missed and things like that. So I think it's this. So this patch was outside of governance, like it was there, but I think what we started to realize, we talked about this last night on episode 4, which was we realized that there was a decent percentage that kind of missed that, or did the patch and then later switched nodes and just built it from source and those types of things. So
I mean, technically people were on the right version, they just linked it wrong.
Right.
Right. It's actually a really good question, because Terra did exactly this. They, grabbed all the validators and said, download this binary, put it on your node. We're not going to do a gov update. We're not posting the source until after. And it turns out that was exactly this vulnerability that took us down. So,
right.
So I think another thing worth mentioning for doing emergency upgrades outside of governance, and we talked about this before, I'm not sure if it was on the podcast or not, is that if you have patched binaries and people build from code, then they might miss the upgrade path, or they might not be on the latest if they come and build the binary after the upgrade's done, and they're just sort of following the GitHub and looking for tagged releases, and then go to the latest, and then they might miss a patch or something like that. So it's better to try and do the things through governance from that standpoint, so that because then the chain halts and it asks for a certain binary. So it can be a little bit tricky. There's a lot of factors involved, and I think, as you say, we're sort of learning the best practices as we move forward in time, and we make stuff ups, and then we sort of learn from our mistakes, and then everything gets better with time.
I think one addition that would be helpful is having the ability to change a governance time, and some things I think could benefit from a longer open period, and some things could benefit from a shorter open period. And even if that governance time is too short, say for an upgrade or something similar that we want to be able to halt, might be better to have a halt and have people come together and solve that versus having an exploit happen, right? if we want to go down that method of kind of forcing gov proposals for breaking upgrades and things like that. So that'd be something to think about.
So we had a question: what's the difference between the Core 1 and Core 2 Juno groups? Do they have different responsibilities? So the Core 1 group is sort of the original founders of Juno. So that includes like Jack, Wolf Contract, Block, a couple of other, I can't remember them all offhand.
Meow.
Meow. Yeah, Jake. Oh, didn't I say Jake? Oh, Jack, Block.
Lots of J's.
Wolf. Sorry, yeah. So these guys are the original. Sort of, they had the idea for it. They started the code base and got the ball rolling with it as a community project for Juno. Because you have to remember, this is pushed as a community project, not a project that's owned by certain developers and only developed by those developers. So then you sort of slip down to the Core 2 group, and they're just a group of people who are more involved with the chain in terms of, they provide support, whether it's coding support or, they might run RPCs or help out a lot with relaying or do a lot of problem solving, come to the party in instances like this when there's a problem and we need all hands on deck to fix it. So that group's become quite large. I think there's like a few dozen of us now in the Core 2 group. But yeah, basically just support for the chain in various capacities. So still developing on the chain, just not the original founding members. So also the Core 1 control the dev fund as well. So they do distributions to various parties who are providing RPC clusters and relaying services to help out with relayer fees and stuff like that. I think they provide support to some devs who are pretty much full-time doing certain parts of support for the chain. So I think that's probably the main differences there between those two groups. If anyone else can think of anything else that might be a difference between there. And I mean, to be fair though, the Core 2 group is not much departed from, the more involved Validator group as well, because there's a lot of validators who are very involved and come to the party as well. And usually, they usually get bumped into that group as well once they've had a fair amount of participation. So, but there's not necessarily any, gain to being in the Core 2 group. It's just a communication channel basically for people who are highly involved to communicate.
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, and I suppose there's some people in Core 2 that in particular were around like very early on in the network and helped its launch as well. So, but the distinction is basically just whether you're a founder or not to some extent. Core 2 until this crisis was about 15 people.
Now it's 38.
It's now 38, I think. Yeah, it's pretty huge.
41. It's getting bigger by the minute.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the thing as well. Like, it's very much a case of like who is helping out at any given time and how much help they're giving. And like people have given a lot of time over the last 48 hours. And like, we've had people staying up in shifts and working on various things together and being on Zoom calls for long lengths of time, looking at stuff. And it's just necessarily meant, because Juno is quite global, that group of people working on stuff has swelled. It'll probably reduce a bit again in future because there just practically aren't, some people are just working on Juno more full time than others. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty open house in terms of who's about and what they're doing. I've also got some more memes. So I've got one from ZDX here. Oh, I need to get rid of the. How do you get rid of the overlay? Yeah, hide current comment.
There you
go. We're going to figure this out one day.
Do that.
We'll figure out professionalism one day. So yeah, that's from Zdex. Hang on. Oh wait, I know how to do this. There we go. For all of you Fortis fans,
you took your. No one can hear you when you put yourself down the bottom.
oh right, okay, fair enough. So yeah, anyway, that's our pick of the memes, the current memes.
Hey,
Oh, did you guys see the When Raw one?
The
I have
When
that-
Raw one.
I have that one queued up
I
here.
saw Max was throwing shit in the chat. Like, there you go.
Here, I got a couple too.
It looks like it's been officially coined the Fisher Price Fisher Price hack as well.
Has it really?
Fisher Price hack, is that?
Okay, fair enough. Fisher Price hack. Here's a fair question. Why do you call it Hello World contract? Jack or Jake?
Because this contract was based on that, like the Hello World template. Like there's this like template contract you can just make, and they modified it, but it had like the same kind of Hello World template. Like the Hello World contract is a counter contract where you like call increment, count, and reset. But they had other shit in there too, which was crazy.
So what is Hello World, Jake?
Well. Technically, the first Hello World contract was in the C programming book from 1978, and it is your first program that you write, and it prints "Hello World" to the command line. It's a very fancy piece of software. We all love Hello World.
Yeah. So when people say Hello World, they tend to mean like a very simple program. And in this case, there is a contract that's very, very simple. And it's literally called Hello World. The attacker, for whatever reason, obfuscation, trolling, decided to use that as the base of what they did and then snuck the ABCI query into the reset function. So yeah, so we covered this a little bit earlier in terms of like it's kind of responsible for people to.
We've got to remember the listener, people. So let's say a naughty validator added some Juno to their own wallet in the Genesis and skipped the invariant checks. What would happen if they tried to move more Juno than other validators see them having? The fray.
Well, I mean, Jack or Jake could equally answer this. I mean, I think the answer is quite straightforward, isn't it?
It's pretty straightforward. They would have a different state of the chain than everyone else, and that's how the blockchain works. So everyone else would have like a certain state of the chain, and they would just move forward, producing blocks for the chain, and that one validator would just be isolated.
Yeah, so he wouldn't actually be able to join the network with a different state. He'd get an app hash error and wouldn't be able to join.
He wouldn't be able to produce any blocks. So
yeah. Even if they didn't do the invariant checks, they still would get. They wouldn't get consensus with everybody else because of the state difference.
Yeah, you would need 2/3 of the validators to collude in order to produce that malicious block. So he'd have to recruit 2/3 of validators to go along with his scheme, which is probably unlikely.
So we got some. There we go. Now we got the memes. Everyone's still on the chat.
This is the best one. That is the best.
I think this right here might be that one
This
might be
so many levels. It's so good.
It does work on a lot of
I
levels.
want that on a t-shirt.
I think that middle frame right there might go on a shirt.
Yeah. It'd be like the longest t-shirt ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's literally, this one's just a bit too real. I think this is literally just the week that everybody has had, or maybe like last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think the last 2 weeks for sure. Yeah.
I think most of these are jabbies.
It's like, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about something nice? And you just like,
Joe
thinking about
Joe just has
There you
killer memes. Yeah, there you go. That's it.
From Dylan at Peter. That's perfect.
So the thing that I don't get right is that Jabby obviously is a regular on the on this here show, and I thought he was like a recital or something, like his kid's thing. Like that's where he is, but apparently he's just on his phone shit posting.
You could do when you have kids. You could do both those.
Can anybody resist shit posting while sitting at a thing?
Yeah.
I mean, can't you like carry the kid with one hand and shit post with your other hand?
There's always time for shit posting.
There's always time.
If there's a free thumb, you can shit post. I love Meow's.
Is that like an Australian saying?
Yeah, well, it's
got a free thumb.
I love Meow's webcam. He runs Linux, and it's like full glitch all the time, and you get like these little. It's like yeah,
Yeah,
the Matrix.
got this really quality microphone too. It's amazing.
Do you even believe in open source if you use a Mac or a Windows machine? Do you? I don't think you do.
Oh, you're just a poser.
Man, you're not playing the open source game.
Oh, MacBook, there it is.
I stand by it.
You're right. You know, Andrew is a Linux person, and Justin from the Strange Love team also a Linux person.
Two huge heroes of this past saga. Like, they've been so helpful. I don't know if you guys have done shout outs yet to like everyone who's done it.
We did a shout out yesterday to Andrew.
Please do shout outs though.
Can I shout out a couple of like non-Juno people who showed up to help out? Because like that
was... man, we sort of gave Secret a bit of a shout out, but give him a proper one, man.
Well, Secret definitely Asaf shout out, amazing. I think that Joe Bowman was in my mind the one who kind of broke the thing on the contract. There were a couple of people. Somebody had queried the contract state, and they found this discrepancy and found the hash. And then Joe was looking at that. Joe Bowman from Quicksilver, formerly Chorus One, they're also running WASM VM on their chain, so he's very interested in this issue. And he was like, "That looks like a hash," and then 5 people said at the same time, "Hash non-determinism," and then that was kind of what broke it a little bit. But yeah, Joe Bowman, fantastic work. Like a lot of people throughout the cosmos coming in and pitching in, and I think it just goes to show how, like, the Juno community, one of the best in the cosmos.
It's a big community now too. There's a lot of people working on it. There's a lot of devs working on it. There's a lot of people interested in it. It's just growing and growing.
So we had this question. I think the troll answer that was given yesterday was, yeah, we're going to go around their house because they left their address for us. The real answer is no at the moment. And, you know, the kind of damage is done. And additionally, what was the benefit of doing it? You know, it kind of seems more like a wind up than anything else because somebody could. And we've had a couple of other interesting questions. And this one I think this one we were talking about a little bit earlier in terms of.
So I'll read it. How can we implement a process where we don't announce to everyone that we have a critical attack vector vulnerability and thus we have to vote to fix it?
So it's a bit out of our hands, isn't it? Because in this case, it's an upstream vulnerability. So we get a notification that it's going to be announced and we get told ahead of time, but we still have to actually roll out the patch, right?
You know, the way that we've done this in the past in Cosmos Networks is, you know, was just talking to some folks in the security DAO in the room with Jake a few minutes ago about this. We try to do responsive, like, so we'll cut a security release of it normally with either a private repo or some innocuous sounding name on the PR. And then we, do responsible disclosure to the validators. So we reach out privately to as many validators as we can get a hold of, say, hey, there's this upstream security vulnerability. Here's what it could do. Here's why we think we need to upgrade the chain. Here's the new binary. Here's the diff. And then we normally set like some height gated upgrade for some point in the future. Validators upgrade behind the scenes, and we announce either right as it happens or just after. And that pattern seems to be pretty good. Obviously, we kind of did it a bit of a different way this time. It's very different when you're running a live incident than when you're running, a sort of security upgrade. But I think moving forward in Juno, we just need to put a little bit of process around this, do regular dependency audits, talk to people, respond when these things happen, and we can prevent a lot of stuff like this in the future. RB just asks, so this is an upgraded chain or just a fork? This is upgraded chain a fork or just Juno 2? This is still Juno 1. Very, very confusing as to what's happening, folks. We don't have categorizations for this.
So, Jack, maybe worth mentioning why we had to stick with Juno 1.
IBC. So if we didn't do this, IBC would be borked for a period of time, and it would be very, very disruptive, even more so than like a multiple day chain halt on Juno. So to avoid, another 2 weeks of no Atom withdrawals or transfers in, we decided to try a non-standard upgrade, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
and
if you change the chain ID, all the clients, like the connection between Osmosis and the connection between Atom or the Cosmos Hub and Juno, all those have to be updated. And the way to update them is you have to submit a governance proposal on each chain to update it. And that would probably take a couple weeks to go through because there's a lot of IBC connections. It's something we as a community would probably need to think a little bit more about.
This happened at another time on another chain, not this exact same thing, but they had was it Sif Chain when they joined IBC? Was it Sif Chain when they had the channel timeout?
That was Lum. It sounds like something Sif Chain would do, but no, it's Lum.
Yeah, so Lum had to then go through a governance proposal to update the channel so that they could then start doing transfers again. So that's the type of thing we're trying to avoid. But there's a number of things that need to stay the same, right, Jack, for IBC to maintain through this upgrade?
Chain ID primarily is the big one. The whole world of sort of chain upgrades in IBC, there was a lot of discussion about that prior to IBC being launched, and we've sort of sketched out some upgrade procedures. It's hard to figure out how to do these upgrade procedures without fucking with the security model of IBC. If you're like, you can change the client that underlies all of the security for all of the tokens that come over this channel, then like, why do you have a light client in the first place? So the only entity that we have given power to change these light clients and to recover these things is governance, because 2/3 of like the governance system should be able to make arbitrary changes to the chain. Like that's kind of how it works. But if you do that, then you can only change it through governance. That means that takes a very long time. So if a network upgrades, there's a new chain ID, you have to wait governance time period. That's a really painful process and takes a long time, which is why we haven't seen anyone do it. And what people are doing now is all these in-place state upgrades. And for example, the Cosmos Hub has now done a bunch of these things. If you run a full Cosmos Hub archive node, there's like 4 different periods of state accumulation. The old state is completely unreadable by a newer binary. So if you try to query the oldest state in the Cosmos Hub archive, your node will panic. You have to stop the node, take all the peers off of it, restart it with an old version, and only query the height band for each of those versions. It's incredibly painful. And I think that these are the types of things that anyone who's worked in enterprise database systems before will recognize as like, you just did this wrong and you're going to have to pay for that for a very long time. And like moving forward,
it reminds me of migration driver pain in Cassandra. Like you're like, oh, hey, you decide to use the wrong timestamp UUID type, or just like any one of the minutiae of things you can do with a large scale, complicated columnar database. It's just like, yeah, you're now going to have to spend a month and 500 lines of code, 1,000 lines of code fixing something that is literally janitorial work.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. And that's the world we're living in now. I think that this IBC upgrade story, there can be work to improve it. I don't see, because people are sort of kicking the can down the road with these other solutions, I don't see it happening anytime soon, but we'll see. There's going to be more IBC funding coming soon for some of these protocol level things, and maybe we can divert some of it that way.
So I love that people think that, sorry, on a completely different subject, just reading through these comments, Max is obviously the gatekeeper of Raw, right? We're all just waiting for Max to release Raw.
Did everybody see the meme, with Lord of the Rings where Max was Aragorn? That was great. Just want to remind everybody.
I did. Made me happy.
All the memes are making me happy in the last day. Oh, wow. With the echo, where'd that come from?
When do we get Max on the show? We need Max.
We'll do a
100,000
100,000 subscribers Max reveal. Maybe he'll agree to that.
Yeah, 100,000 subs reveal.
That's the number. Then Max will dox himself. I haven't asked Max about this.
Thanks to everyone who's watching as well. This is the most amount of turnout we've had for a stream to date, so it's good. Very nice to see.
I think that's an agreement. I think there you go. So 100,000 subs, Max will come on the show. We'll fly him over to Null's place, and they can get drunk or something.
That's how I'm reading that. He can sit right next to me here with my beauty light.
Well, no, but I mean, you guys have wombats, right? That's why I said Australia.
Yeah, for sure.
You are Australian, right? So you got a pet wombat, right? That's just a thing.
No, the only wombats I see are like roadkill.
So I heard that the 9th level of the dungeon is where the 0-day exploit that is going to be the next Juno Hall lives. Do you guys want to come find it after we get this thing started again?
So you're gonna have to explain. Some people might not know what you mean by the dungeon here.
The thing about the dungeon is only the cool kids know about the dungeon. You got to go find out about the dungeon for yourself.
Yeah, you got to go find out about the dungeon.
I can only tease the dungeon. I can't tell you about the dungeon.
So
you will get RSI getting there.
You can only be told what the
your
dungeon
right
is.
finger. You'll get RSI.
So you can be told what the dungeon is, but you have to see it for yourself, kind of thing.
You have to go talk to people at the inn, and the people at the inn give you a side quest, and then you can find the dungeon. Any other D&D players on here?
I feel like I'm going to put it out there that Usurper is the D&D player.
Nope.
Not me. That's a pretty hefty.
Nope. Nothing to see.
Nope.
But you see the tenor and the speed with which you denied it.
Not saying anything.
There's nothing wrong with D&D.
There's nothing wrong with D&D. No, not at all.
I just don't happen to have the. I actually would quite like to do D&D, but frankly, I don't have enough friends who are into board games to, or like have the patience to do like a long-term board game like that.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Just in relation to this question, guys, seems like there should be an elected group that can act fast and bypass normal governance for 0-day exploits. If they get it wrong, they get superseded. So that can't be done simply because you need 67% of the network to upgrade to a new binary for it to continue.
It's really mentioned for 3.1.0 though. So I think we have a precedent in terms of doing this. But if we were going to do it in future, the thing that would have to change is that we would need a process around it. And that sounds really boring, but like the reality is the blocker for this is more of a social process that, we would just need like, here is the checklist of what we need to do in order to get enough validators on. And the fun thing about this upgrade that we've just done is we've had to make a spreadsheet of all the validators and get in touch with them and get on a Zoom call where, Jack and everybody have been going, who can get in touch with so and so. Oh, Meow knows how to get in touch with them. Who can get in touch with so and so? Jack knows. Who can get in touch with so and so? Oh, they're in the chat. No worries. And so I think we now have the capability to do this, but we still haven't like codified a way of doing it. But that's the kind of stuff you're talking about with SecDAO, right? Isn't it?
I think we should. I think governance needs to like vote to elect a few people to play this role, because it would be nice to like have the official stamp of governance on this. Because in prior networks that I've done it in, it's just like the devs are like, you guys are the trustiest devs, you guys do it. And it's, that's okay. It totally works. But, it's better if it's more transparent. And I think it would be cool to see a governance proposal. Juno governance, just hot, so hot right now.
Hansel.
I think another important thing is we need to like just keep up to date with upgrades. Like we kind of got caught up with the whale drama, and this upgrade could have been in like a week or two ago. And if we have a better regular cadence with upgrades, that means a lot of times like with 2.1.0, we actually had a patch that was an emergency patch, and we applied it without having to have anyone vote on anything. It was really quick. And if we keep our software up to date and we don't have state-breaking changes, then we can act quickly in the case of a security exploit.
Well, I think we said the original Lupercalia was originally coined because we thought it would be in February, but then we heard that there was going to be a security patch in a week, so we pushed it back, and then we originally said 15th of March would be Lupercalia. So you can literally see exactly when it fell and how we got completely sidetracked from actually. It's as much a prioritization thing, right?
Yeah, totally.
Well, up until this point, we have not had a process for security issues. I think that if we had a process for security issues, like let's say we had something like this in the past, and that one came around, Terra freaked out when they saw it. They did an emergency upgrade validators. They did it real quiet too. If we had something similar, and I think the next time one of these comes around, we'll do the same thing. It's really uncontroversial. Fix horrible issue that will take down chain. Great, easy. Validators are all behind that.
Yeah.
And the key is to just keep those processes only for security-related stuff, because if you start violating the trust there, that's when things get real fucked.
Right, exactly. And, it's also, again, worth saying that, like, we're talking about root cause here. We had the patch in the same day it was released, just like we have done with the security patch that was released today. The failing was in process rather than the patches and stuff itself. Like, we keep going on about what's the hard bit here, and it's the social side, not the not the technology a lot of the time, right? There you go, Jack. You got a fan?
So I've got a.
I can't see this.
Dang.
How do I know?
Well,
didn't work. There's a good meme from the Discord chat. It's pretty funny.
Okay, I'll check this out.
Speaking of memes and having an open thumb, did you just build a meme while we were on this call?
I did. I am once again asking to skip Crisis Invariance, please.
Anyone know how to get that up on this? It's a video. I don't know how to get it up.
I don't know. I think you maybe have to like actually load it into the streamy thingy and then just play it.
Oh yeah. Oh, video file. Right. Yeah. Okay. Duh.
That's pretty good.
We're slowly learning how to stream, guys. We're slowly learning.
We're assembling the plane on. If you thought that a group of people involved in Juno would not be assembling the plane on the way down for everything they do, including the stream, then yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna have to go here soon, guys. It seems like this thing is going to take an incredibly long time. So I hope and pray that everyone gets through it before they get jailed. But I don't think that that's a likely outcome given what's the jailing time, like a day, 16 hours. Yeah, pretty sure everyone's going to get through it before then.
Yeah, honestly, we only need like one person to get through the invariant checks, or like 2 or 3, and then we know they work and that the state is sound, and we'll get the chain up. So hopefully someone with someone with a really fast computer will get through them soon, hopefully.
All right, thanks guys, it's been awesome, and I'll be keeping an eye on it while I'm going about some other things. So have a good day, guys. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Memes will age well if this is a funeral stream. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's go. I see that. I see they've got faith. It's good.
Have you got some more memes here, Usurp?
That's only the one.
That's true.
That's Jack's.
Yeah, that's mine. I'm Bernie Sanders. Once again, asking validators to restart their nodes.
I wonder, like, I'm really, really, really curious about who's going to get through first as well now, because we're at the point where I think the longest that anybody has reported this taking previously was 4 hours, right? That's what we heard from other chains.
I'm almost there on one of these nodes.
Are you past the can withdraw?
No. I'm only can withdraw for me was check number 4. So I think the other ones went pretty quick though, from what I've seen from others. But I'm on can withdraw, and this has been running since it'll be 4 hours and 7 minutes. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Percentage is about 50 now, I think.
I like this one. That's a good one. What else we got? There's a lot of thought discussion in the comments.
These degens, they just want it bad.
Sensational.
Percentage, we're at 48% right now.
Yeah.
So what is that, 14%? No. 18% away from ready.
Yeah, getting close.
This is when I start getting anxiety.
Yeah. It's gonna be cool. It's gonna be cool. But so I just noticed Wolf's posted a loading bar that just loads forever in the chat. Nice.
That's nice. About right.
That's I think about
pretty standard.
Yeah. So I mean, we can we can wait for some more. So Dimmy said, oh well, he used the, if you don't run the invariant checks, well, you won't find out that he's allocated himself another 20 million Juno in the validator chat as a threat to validators who are skipping invariant checks. And I think that's about all that's happened in the last few minutes.
Do we know how much prices have changed since Juno went down? Because someone's going to have real fun arbing Juno swap when this thing comes back up.
We were talking about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, who is going to take advantage of that, Jack? Is it you?
I wish.
Yeah, there's probably some really good returns there.
I hope somebody used Lens to build their transaction bot, because it is the best way to build transaction bots for Cosmos chains. Just saying. So
and what is Lens, Jack, and who wrote it?
Well, sir, this is the Strangelove product. It's the best Cosmos client library out there. I just want to go ahead and encourage folks to give back to your open source community and try some Lens.
Yeah, make a trading bot. Yeah, make some cryptos.
Yeah.
If you're quick before the invariant checks finish, would you say, Jack, that Lens is so easy to use that you could write a trading bot before the invariant checks complete and the chain comes up?
Would I say that? Yes, I would say that. Would I be right? Depends on how gangster you are. Maybe you're that gangster. If you're that gangster, I got a job for you.
Would you care to post a link in the chat? We've already got some people
dropped one in.
interested.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Lens, Lens, Strangelove Ventures /Lens on GitHub. I think I posted it in the private chat, but I need to find the YouTube video.
I put it in the chat, but maybe links get blocked in this chat, huh?
On YouTube?
Yeah.
Is YouTube blocking links in chats? That's lame.
Yeah, I think so.
If you drop it in the private, you have dropped it in the private chat.
Yeah.
Can post it here. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
Oh, you could drop links. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, people have been asking about the whiskey. This is Highland Park, only 10-year, but it's very quaffable.
Highland Park, Bubba Sparks.
It's the one. It's pretty sick. It's not as good as the one we were drinking in Lisbon, but it's not bad either. So, I'm deleting my thing. So before we started going on to other things, I was wondering, like, we get this perennial question, like sometime every stream somebody asks how we got into crypto, and generally how we got into validation as well. So maybe less so to Meow because you're more of a dev than a validator, but Usurper, how did you get into validation in crypto and in Cosmos specifically, right?
Helium was my gateway drug. If you guys are familiar with that project, the Helium project does LoRaWAN kind of nodes out that sit. They're small, like Raspberry Pi based type of things with radios that sit on, and they be able to transmit. They'd be able to receive small LoRaWAN packets and pass it on. And as you do that, you're able to kind of earn some rewards from that. There's a whole proof of coverage type of model to that, which I thought was really interesting, kind of getting into it a few years ago. And then before that, before they had validators, which now they do, that's a kind of consensus group driven type of approach where there's a large set of validators, but only look, there's one. There's an original hotspot right there. So
shout out Helium. This thing earned me $70,000.
Not 2022 rewards are slightly less. But before validators, that kind of consensus group approach was actually run on the Raspberry Pis themselves. So there might be a couple thousand, or at some point there was 20,000 or 30,000 hotspots, and then that about 40 or so of those would be 43 or less would be kind of picked to run consensus, and they would run for 30 minutes, and then the next group would get elected and things like that. And then validators, I got involved in that early, and then kind of got really involved in the validator kind of dev, and really a lot of testing associated with that, and really started to understand, some of the kind of core concepts there. And so I have an infrastructure background and slight security background, and just, some startups and entrepreneurship and those types of things. And that kind of drew me in. And then there's a good overlap between early Helium validators and Cosmos validators. And so I met some really good groups here, like Artifact is a good example of that. And then I got introduced to Osmosis, and then from there, it's all over.
Yeah, once you find validation with that background, you fall deep into the rabbit hole, and then you end up on Game of Nodes.
There you go. Honestly, yeah, I'm happy to be here. And I think one of the real great things, early on in Cosmos, the validator set on the Helium network, just great group of people who were very close in testnet and those types of things. And then when I got to Cosmos, I thought early on it seemed I just didn't get into the right groups and like start talking to individuals, but man, what a great group of people. And not only from a cultural perspective and willing to help out, like we've talked about in here, but you really get to meet some incredibly intelligent folks, which has been really awesome. Like, I'm always learning in this area, right? Like, there's a good part of this I understand, but there's so much being exposed to, and that part's been awesome.
Nice. And Jack, why not? How did you get involved in all this?
So I bought my first Bitcoin back in 2013. I think I heard about it with the pizza thing. What is that? Cool mint. That looks nice. I think I heard about it with the pizza thing, and I was a libertarian, and I think the God, what was that guy's name? The Snowden revelation sort of like, you know, shifted me a lot further towards that like libertarian side of things. And, you know, I was going to go work in finance. The company that I was going to go work for went out of business in the 2008 recession. So I ended up cooking professionally. So like totally somebody who would be a crypto person. You know, so I started programming after a while and moved to San Francisco. And the guy that I moved in with was working for some fintech company at the time. And like, I was also working for a traditional tech company. And while we were living together, he quit and started working at this company called Blockstack, which is this like Bitcoin maxi shop. And like, we used to just sit around and get high and talk about Bitcoin all day, every day. And after a while, he finally wore me down. He's like, dude, quit your like broke ass tech job and like come work on digital currencies, man. Like Bitcoin's the future. And I was like, yeah, sure. Fuck yeah, it is. So anyway, fell in with both feet. And that's kind of how I got into it. And then validating, my partner at Strangelove, Tyler, and I actually started to do a mining company for a little while. And that was back in 2017. So I was like working at Blockstack and like trying to set up miners on the side, getting a bit of my sort of hardware feet wet. You know, Usurper, you have a professional background in this, and like my professional background with that comes from like cloud stuff. So like all of my hardware experience was cloud stuff. So like the physical mining machines, like that was kind of wild to me. Like I never booted into a BIOS before and all that stuff. So that was really fun. And then, you know, one of the things that I really liked about Blockstack is it wasn't just Bitcoin technology. They were trying to take Bitcoin technology and build the sort of next level of it. And having worked in traditional database land, I knew a lot about how traditional databases scaled. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. And after a while at Blockstack, I kind of got disillusioned with the Bitcoin maxi thing because like they are living in a different world where computers work in a way that they don't actually work. And so I left that company and I was like, okay, so like, I know this consensus thing is important and like who's doing the best consensus work. And one of those crazy coincidences happened to live 5 minutes away from the Tendermint offices. And, you know, 1 5-minute call with Zaki where he was getting out of a car and he goes, yeah, you worked at Blockstack. Munib's cool. You should come work with us. Like meet me at the office in 2 days. And so that's how I got into Tendermint. But yeah, kind of a weird one.
What year was that?
That was 2018, early 2018. Yeah.
Awesome.
And when I showed up at Tendermint, it was like a bomb had went off because this company had raised 17 million that turned into 700 million at the peak of the 2017 run up. They sold the top. So the foundation had something ridiculous, like 300 million in cash. There were 30 to 40 people working for the company. No one could give me a real number. No one knew what anyone else did at the company. And everyone was just kind of like running around doing crazy things. And occasionally people would come together and work on product.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I was a developer evangelist. So I'm like, okay, like, how do I build it to make it easier for people to use the product? And I wrote a couple of small programs and I was like, so there's no product, right? And everyone's like, yeah, there's no product. No one has any idea what's going on. I was like, okay, so like you guys need a product manager, right? And everyone was like, the last 3 of those got their heads chopped off and got fired. Like, do you really want to do that? I was like, yeah, of course I do.
I'm in.
So anyway, that's how I got the product manager job. Also,
That's awesome.
The prior product managers at Tendermint were, let's see here, Brian Cran from Chorus One, who is now the CEO of Chorus One, Ethan Frey, who wrote Cosm Wasm. Who was the guy before me? It was one of the co-founders of Anoma, and then me. So that was the history of product management at Tendermint. It's kind of.
I mean, also generally people I would have thought of, I mean, yourself included, as more technical than product for whatever reason, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a technical product.
It is,
and that's exactly what it is. And I view product as inherently about the users, and like our users are people like yourselves. Usurper. When I was building the validation set, I was looking for people with exactly your background.
Yeah.
Someone who wants to hack on cool new stuff, has a background in computing, has worked on production systems for a long time. And I just kind of listened to what they told me and tried to make the experience such that more and more people with that background got pulled in. And, I think, Frey, when your product is technical, it's extremely important to be very technical. And I think where a lot of blockchain, I see a lot of blockchain companies make a couple of mistakes here. One is not being technical enough and trying to sell technical product.
Mm-hmm.
And I think developers instantly sniff that out. They smell bullshit and they want nothing to do with it. And I think we can all think of a couple of projects that have taken that approach. And then there's the other approach, which is what I like to call Professor Coin, where you build this crystal castle. You keep saying you've got something cool. You've got like this, you show people something and you're like, you can do this really cool thing. But the deeper you dig into it, the pieces don't all fit together. There's no thought to user experience. There's no thought to the product experience. It's just like, does this implement this ideology that the founder has? And, at Cosmos, I ran into Professor Coin at Blockstack. Like, I think that is like very much that. And when I came to Cosmos, I was like, I worked for these Silicon Valley companies and like they knew how to do developer experience. Like I went to DevXCon. I talked to all the MongoDB DevX people. Like I was in the San Francisco developer experience scene at InfluxDB. Like that was like, I was super into that for a while. So when I came to Cosmos, I was like, okay, like I've seen how the best people do it. Like, why don't we do it like that here? And luckily enough, I had enough developers who supported me and worked with me to help make it happen. And, the sort of, culture of Cosmos has been shaped by that in a lot of ways, I think. And it's really cool. It's one of the reasons I like it here.
Nice.
Jake?
Meow, do you want to go?
I mean, do people really want to hear like long stories of how I got into crypto?
I do, because I don't know it.
I actually heard about the Bitcoin white paper and I read it and I wrote about it in undergrad and I failed that paper. And I want to like someday go back and like try to find that paper and talk to my professor and be like, you were wrong. I should have gotten a better grade. But I come from like the crypto anarchist side. I went to like Berkeley. I worked in like open source for a while. I was really interested in like decentralized content distribution and how like, like artists or like authors or people can like make things and get paid for them without having to give like Jeff Bezos like a 30% cut, or Apple Music a huge cut, or Spotify or whatever. So yeah, just kind of naturally was drawn to crypto, and then got really into Ethereum, and like I had an open source startup at the time, and like I worked on it for like 3 years and like paid all my rent just from having a crypto trading bot. And then the market crashed and I was still really into it. I met Sunny at Blockchain Berkeley event and he was talking about Cosmos. I think this was back in like 2017 or something like that. And that was a big conversation because like a year later, I wound up meeting Shane in a cafe and he had a Cosmos sticker and I knew about it. And we had this big conversation about Cosmos and we became friends. And eventually I was like, okay, I'm ready to like quit my job and work full time in Cosmos and run validators. And I worked on Stargaze for like, I think I've been working on that for like 2.5 years. We've been going for a while. And then also got involved in Juno, and then that just wound up exploding, which was really crazy. And now I get to work on really cool shit like DAO-DAO. In fact, we're like here at a hacker house with all the cool DAO-DAO people. Say hi, Zeke.
What up, guys?
Yeah, we got like security DAO here.
Zeke. Hey, Zeke, how's it going?
Everyone's like hacking on cool shit for ETH Portland, and we're not at the conference because the chain is down. So, we don't want to be like, yeah, come check out Juno, and can't really do anything right now. So, but it's gonna be up soon, hopefully. I don't know what's our percentage like. yeah. Anyway, that's my crypto story, or a fast version of it.
And we're still stuck at 50%.
Great.
Powerful, the powerful Berkeley crypto anarchists. Like it is a serious crew.
It is a serious crew, yeah. It is really funny how
people.
you've got like the libertarian people and like the crypto anarchist people, and they're just like two sides of like similarly aligned people, and they work together in really great ways. So.
I have turned into much more of a crypto anarchist since I've gotten into this industry, and especially since joining Cosmos, which I think that there's a lot of crypto projects that are aligned with universities. Like Cosmos is Berkeley coin in a lot of ways, which is interesting.
So true. I mean, like yeah, just so many great Cosmos devs went to Berkeley. It's really hilarious. So,
I mean, you can fucking tell that Cosmos is heavily West Coast US by how quiet it is when it's just me and Null in the core chat, and we're the only ones awake. Like this actual morning during a crisis, there was like there was a 2-hour period where before the US East Coast woke up, it was just me and Null being like, so what are our priorities today? Yeah, like it's kind of crazy.
Big shout out to you, Alex. Like you've done so much to like really I don't know if someone's sung your praises yet, but you should all delegate to the Fray Needlecast because he's done so much work.
We're quite high commission, and that's lame.
Now you should still delegate, and like seriously, you've done such great work to like help put this together. We've really had an amazing community of people that have come together to work on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that blew me away really was like, especially like the first day when people were like doing handoffs throughout the middle of the night and stuff. Because I was up till like some stupid hour and then got up at 5 a.m. and like Max was just signing off and kind of handed over and that kind of thing. And it was like, okay, we actually do have like a really impressive team of people here. I'm gonna give you an easy one. I've just seen a message in the chat which you're gonna like, Jake. So
yes, I've loved this question. In fact, we have people working on it right now. So one of the cool things about DAO-DAO is we're working on like next gen like DAO governance systems, basically. So Zeke is actually working right at the moment on like a new set of the next gen DAO contracts, which are going to be audited, by the way. And these contracts are really powerful. It allows for DAOs to have many different types of governance systems. So you can have multiple choice proposals. People can implement things like quadratic voting or zero knowledge voting is something we have a team starting to look into. We have different types of voting power. So you could have voting power that's based on like NFT ownership or staked native tokens or staked CW20 tokens or just membership, like you're like in a multi-sig. So yeah, really, really cool stuff that is coming with like the next DAO-DAO release. And I'm super stoked about it. And I think we're really just hoping that some of that, kind of just makes its way into like larger chain governance. Like we're really at what I think is the very beginning of what these tools can be used for, which is like governing self-sovereign communities. And yeah.
I mean, Jake, just to sort of like add on to what you're saying, like I think the work you're doing with DAO-DAO is the hardest work in crypto right now, and also the highest potential. Like in terms of things that really have the potential to be a paradigm change in not only global finance, but also like the way that we organize ourselves as humans, like better governance tooling in these persistent online systems, I think is the biggest, period. You guys are doing the best work in Cosmos on it right now, and I'm really happy to try to help support that in Strange Love.
Thanks. I cannot wait to get back to like just focusing on DAO-DAO and not having to worry about the whale and chain halts and stuff like that. But
yeah, that would be cool.
Soon.
I think that and there's a lot of other there's just so much low hanging fruit, I think, in the governance area in general that is just really, really exciting. And I think everything we've seen in the last month has just shown like how much more we could be doing with that space. But until now we haven't really had the devs or the energy or the brain power to think about all those possibilities and the ways we can move it forward. So
I mean, think about this when we're talking about Berkeley. Sunny wrote the first governance module, and then Jake's writing DAO-DAO. All the Cosmos governance stuff, which is, by the way, the most used on-chain governance stuff in all of crypto, all written at Berkeley.
Yeah, exactly. Jack, there's a question for you there. I know, can you see that? So I agree. It says, I agree with your take on user-centric design. With that knowledge, are there plans to make Juno transactions and contracts more human readable, or for a layer that translates these things for average users?
Yeah, Silver, I think that that's an excellent question. But this is where the sort of product focus comes in. There's, as an organization, and, I have this like really privileged position to be able to look at the entire cosmos as an organization and try to think like, how do we route effort towards all of these things that need to get done? This is absolutely a huge and emerging need. However, there's a ton of work that needs to go in to enable this. There's a few people working on it right now, but it's hard to, there's some fundamental technology that needs to be built, and a lot of the people who can build that are blocked doing other things. So it's going to be interesting to see how long that takes to sort of materialize. I don't, I think that people should work on problems that they're personally passionate about. Smart contract verification, not something I'm personally passionate about, and I know that there are a lot of other people out there who are. So there's a couple of folks in the Terra ecosystem. The former head of developer relations for Terra, William something, is working on a startup to do this. I know Larry from Delphi Digital also has some folks that are working on this. I think Jake and some of his friends are working on this, but we've got a lot of people working on that problem. It will get solved. But I think that the thing to remember is that, user experience sort of runs up against what is possible in the real world. And the job of like dev teams and product teams is to like take what's possible, push it a little bit further, go make sure that that's sustainable, and just like do it again and again. And right now that's a little bit further out of the grasp than what's sustainable and what's easy to do.
Yeah, but we have been talking with like a lot of people about it. I actually had a really good call with Ethan last week, and this is a really high priority thing. So I think especially after like this incident and having to like debug that contract, it's like really on the top of a lot of people's minds. And honestly, we had already been talking about it like before this happened. So I think we're going to see some really cool progress on this in the next couple months.
I would love that, because this whole like contract verification thing that we just dealt with is like looking at decompiled contracts, like forget about it.
Yeah, it's absolute fucking madness, isn't it? When we first got like the decompiled stuff, it was like, my background is I am an application engineer. Like I can do whatever down to databases, but I am an application engineer. And I just look at that and like, right, cool, decompiled stuff with obfuscated names. Great. This is fucking useless to kind of read and try and get to the bottom of. So like, yeah, like you say, it's one of those things where for pretty much everybody involved, from security onto like ordinary developers onto members of the community that want to verify things, it's like hugely important for the ergonomics of trust, really, right?
That's a really good way of putting it.
I mean, I just like the word ergonomics. I think it's quite important. Even though I've never worked in DevRel, I kind of think that whoever your users are, right? That's where.
Well, I mean, you might not have worked in DevRel, but you have used a lot of software. You know what's good and what's easy to use. And when you build software, you try to make it easy to use for other people. This is one of those things that I think is like sort of underlies Professor Coin. People think that you need to do the best job you possibly can. You have to make it perfect. And it's most important to like build this absolutely pristine statue. But the fact is that if you have this pristine statue, but nobody understands what it means, and it's really hard to go look at, who's going to appreciate that? You have to communicate the work that you do. That is the hardest work that we do. And in order to get these systems adopted at scale, it is by far the lion's share of the work that needs to be done. The actual coding itself, while critical and a sine non qua, is a small chunk of the actual work that needs to get done. The harder part of IBC was not building IBC. We had IBC done for a while. The hardest part of IBC was convincing all of the counterparty chains to upgrade, explaining it over and over again. I still have conversations where I explain IBC all the time. It's hard.
Wait, to some extent, do you think that like the problem is actually that as rational as developers are, certainly, so let's take aside like ordinary users where I think this problem is even more so, but like even developers like to pretend they're rational, but a lot of what they do is based on feeling and emotion, right? And if the code doesn't make you feel good, if the solution doesn't make you feel good, or even if just the way it was presented to you as like a thing didn't make you feel good, like if the documentation didn't make you feel good or whatever, like it sounds so insane. I think people who maybe aren't developers might be surprised by this, but I think that like is a genuine factor in like the adoption of software. And like that was the thing I think with Cosmos for me anyway, was like you see that I'm not wild about Starport, but like it was one of the first times where I saw something where somebody went, I've at least tried to think about how somebody who is interested in this technology but just has an evening or a weekend and needs to just see a feedback loop will feel when they do Starport init, Starport serve. And I was like, right, somebody gives a shit here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, I was like, this doesn't solve a problem I have, but like it shows that there's an ecosystem that cares about that experience, right? And how devs feel when they interact with the software, because they got to write on top of it for days, months, years. Like Jake and co, you know, Stargaze team, like working on Stargaze for 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a long relationship you have with software as an engineer.
I think that a lot of people who build software think that human feelings are a bug. Human feelings are a feature. It is like part of why we are here, and it is part of what makes life worth living. And you know, any system that treats your feelings as a bug, like that is not a system that I want any part of.
Yeah, well played.
We're at 49%, by the way.
Somebody said 51%.
No,
It's the latest number I just got in the chat. So just passing it on. I see a when percent in the chat. So, you know, 49.
Devastating.
Yeah, it is devastating. Somebody just watched the last episode of Silicon Valley. That's why they're quoting 51%.
Right.
That's some episodes of that are just a bit too real. If like the Scrum episode, holy shit, I was like, I once for a little while worked as an engineering kind of lead, and I spent a lot of my time in meetings as a result. Like, and that thing of where you go to a meeting and it's like a pre-meeting and you're there literally just because you need to protect the engineers on your team from having to go to the meeting, and you're there, you're like, I am in this meeting for no reason other than to distract you so that other people can actually get some work done. Like, and you're like, this is too real, this show, because it's in there.
I mean, there are so many times in my tech career where I have like lived episodes of that show. And in fact, when I was at Blockstack, they were like doing an ICO pitch in the show, and the founders of Blockstack were technical advisors on Silicon Valley, and they sent us this slide deck to like make it sound like an actual blockchain company. It was fucking crazy pants. And then I watched the episode and I was like, that's literally my workplace.
That's amazing. Yusepa, somebody in the chat has asked, is Wolf in your cupboard?
Is what?
Is Wolf, I presume Wolf contract in your cupboard, or maybe just a general Wolf?
I have no idea what that means.
Unless that door behind you is not in fact a cupboard, it is actually a door to a corridor.
Could be. That's funny.
So the question is, has anybody got past the invariant checks yet? I haven't checked in on the chat in a little while.
No one's gotten past the invariant
Not here.
checks. I think someone will, hopefully pretty soon. We have some pretty powerful hardware people are running, so
yeah,
I mean, we only need one or
everybody's
two or
optimized for
three.
RAM,
So what?
everybody's optimized for RAM, aren't they?
Some people have really beefy like processors too, like some of the fastest you can buy. So I'm hoping that one or two of those like finishes the invariant checks, and then we can all just like stop checking the invariants and skip them and go.
50%.
Again, this is a little bit. It's a little bit like. Have you seen the film The Warriors? Do you know that film? when they keep going the radio announcer. It's just like one night where they're trying to get back to Coney Island, and it's just like the Warriors are doing pretty well now. Just like it's kind of like that, but with like the percentage. It's like the Juno's got to 51%. Let's see how they're going now. All right. Oh yeah, apparently 51% was posted on Twitter, so that's why. Fair play. So yeah, I guess like I'd be interested as well, like because we talk a lot about like Horcrux and some of the other like Strangelove projects. Like, what else have you guys got in the works? Because for a bit of context as well for people who are listening to the show, in this very extended edition, we talked yesterday about how the testing framework that Horcrux have been building, that Strangelove have been building out to test IBC connections has been really crucial to being able to recover, or at least being able to come up with a pathway to recover from this bug. So like, I know you folks are doing a lot of the heavy lifting with like essentially developer tooling, I guess, which brings us back to sort of developer experience, right, in the eco.
Yeah, I think that we want to build that IBC test framework into a full-featured development tool, and I think it's useful for a number of things. Right now, there's no easy way to integration test these huge systems. And, I have run into this before a lot of other folks in the ecosystem, building things like SOM, building things like IBC. I built the first version of that test framework in the IBC relayer, and you can go check it out. And then we built what was in Horcrux, and then I worked with the Sommelier team to build this one where we spin up an Ethereum chain. We deploy a bunch of contracts, which is the first time I built one of those things with contracts in it. And we're taking all of those lessons and we're wrapping those up into the IBC test framework. And we anticipate that to be a full feature development tool for cross-chain smart contract environments. So Juno devs, when you want to interact with the stuff over on Osmosis, they're going to be deploying smart contracts, and, we're going to want Juno smart contracts that have interchain accounts over on Osmosis and are, doing all kinds of stuff over there. When you want to put that together, we want you to use the IBC test framework as an easy way to spin up full validator sets with state and test complex flows. So that's, you're asking what we're building. That is kind of the next generation of thing that we're building. We've been planning it for a while. We've done a lot of attempts at this, but we've never really laid code down until a couple weeks ago when Andrew started on it. And this was a great excuse to sort of pull it out and see what it can do. And it's a pretty powerful tool, which is really exciting. So that's cool. We're working on the Cosmos Builders Foundation, which I've talked about quite a bit, bring together everyone in the ecosystem to contribute to a core pot of money to fund core development. And then let's see, what else do we have going? We've really started to build out a front end team too. And, for a long time, Strangelove has been sort of Jack's technical effort. My partner, Tyler, has been working in mainline user experience for Web2 companies for the last 5 to 10 years. And he's finally come in full-time in crypto. He tried to do user experience consulting. Jake is the leader of a posse and has been for a while. Partial. We're just all figuring that out. Yeah.
Hey, actually, Strangelove has been really great, and you guys are you've got some developers on DAO-DAO, which is great. Been very exciting, and yeah. Also, I just invited Zeke and Case here, who are also working on that.
I thought that was Case. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you.
How's it going? Good to see you.
I didn't know you were working on DAO-DAO too. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's I learned about it at the Cosmoverse conference in November, and I was like, yes, it's really exciting to have something that you have templated smart contracts, and you don't have to think about it, and especially when they get to be audited. That's going to be so nice to be able to just run a DAO and do inter-DAO contracts and inter-DAO exchanges.
Yeah,
interchain
accounts is going to be the game-changing moment for Juno. That's going to be when we have interchain accounts on Stargaze and Osmosis, and DAOs can LP their treasury and get income, and DAOs can launch NFT collections cross-chain. That's going to be
I think that interchain accounts is one piece of that. So we need to be able to write state, which is interchain accounts. That is critical, and that is the key first piece of interoperability. But for true composability, we need the ability to read state too. There is an in-progress implementation for interchain queries so that any state that exists anywhere in Cosmos can be brought onto any chain and used in state machine execution. This is a generalized Oracle technology that is going to be, the combination of both of those two things is really what's needed. It is going to be huge. Joe Bowman and the Quicksilver team have built out the first initial version of interchain queries. This takes care of like 50 to 60% of use cases. It's only key value queries. But we're working with a couple of different contractors right now to try to finalize some resources to build out the next piece of interchain queries, which is the ability to do application level queries or query smart contract state from another chain. And once you have the ability to read and write, you can do anything. And like that, I think that creates real composability in Cosmos in the way that it exists on Ethereum, but actually in a scalable way. And like, you know, applications like Sommelier rely on this type of thing. You know, the way that we read data in Som right now from Ethereum is we like all the validators vote on it, and it's this complicated thing. But with IBC, we have these light clients that prove state on all these other counterparty chains, and we can just use those to verify data coming from those chains. It's an unbelievably flexible framework that is much more performant and is going to enable the type of scalability to have a chain like Juno host 10,000 DAOs that control accounts on hundreds of other chains. And like, that's what Juno is going to be in 2 years. It's going to be crazy.
Somebody in the chat has asked, what does that mean for ban protocol? Does that make it obsolete?
I think it makes some uses of ban protocol obsolete because we'll be able to query like the price of something on like Osmosis or Juno Swap, but there's still going to be like off-chain data, like weather APIs or like stock market APIs that are not quite on chain yet. And I think there will still be a role for oracles. I do hope they upgrade IBC soon though, because they've been taking their sweet time. So
I would agree with that. You know, that there is always a role to like bring some of this off-chain stuff on-chain, but a lot of the stuff that people talk about these Oracle networks is really overblown. And Chainlink, props to Chainlink, they built one of the first meme armies, and like valuable thing to learn. Glad they did it. Glad I could learn from it. But yeah, this sort of Oracle technology that they talk about in the centrality of it, like it's just not that central. You know, we can use light clients to prove these things, and we don't need a bunch of complicated extra networks.
Yeah, and as we have more and more cool stuff as Cosmos zones, like just everything's on chain, everything's queryable. Like
I'm curious as well, like, what do you think about the interaction between the SDK and Cosmosm? Because it kind of seems like, I mean, obviously Juno's a Cosmosm zone, and there are increasingly, I think, Cosmosm zones being spun up in the Cosmos. Like, what do you think about the interaction between developers building, I guess, the product level stuff in Cosmosm versus, you know, the SDK like in Go? Because I know you're a big Go guy, right?
I am, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to being able to write smart contracts that go on top of Cosmosm, which should be enabled sometime next year. But in terms of building in the underlying chain primitives in the Cosmos module side of things, that user experience is about to take a huge step up. For a wide variety of reasons, it's been a very painful migration from what was basically a beta product that we launched and had 30 to 40 different chains adopt to this sort of end state where there's a full featured ORM within the chain. You write all of your stated protobuf files, and all you're essentially writing is message handlers and then begin block and end block. And like that user experience is going to come out in 0.4.6 of the SDK. We'll be able to get rid of all of this amino stuff with some new signing infrastructure we've got. And, you know, that is going to be a great development environment. And I think at that point, like, why would you develop in Cosmos modules versus develop in a smart contract language? Cosmos modules, you compile it once and it's done. And I think it's a lot more auditable. It's a lot easier to see when coins are moving around. It's much more verbose code. And for those reasons, it's a lot more secure in a lot of ways. It's one of the reasons why we've been able to build IBC to the level of security that we have. We haven't seen any hacks in the core staking module or distribution modules. It's because of this extremely verbose code. CosmWasm is a great application development environment for like rapid iteration. And I think we see more and more of it being used for that. But I think both of these things are going to kind of coexist for a long time. Does the Cosmos SDK eventually become something that is just hosts a VM and that VM is a WASM VM? Maybe. I think the Agoric people would have something to say about that. But yeah, like these are the questions that the next couple of years of the blockchain market are going to teach us. And I think that the one thing that hasn't been talked about here is like, how much does sovereignty matter and how much do applications value sovereignty? Will people continue launching new validator sets, or will they launch rollups or shared security zones? At what point do rollups or shared security zones stop being rollups or shared security zones and become validator sets? How does that whole dev flow look? Those are the interesting questions in blockchain development that we're going to see over the next few years.
Right, because I guess on some level it's like, are we talking about, like, is the value to the average developer of blockchain that you're getting Ruby on Rails with built-in payments, or is it that you're getting decentralization, right? Because those two schools of thought are both very, very large multi-trillion-dollar industries to build product on top of, but they're very, very different in ideology, right?
Yeah, they really are. You know, Ruby on Rails for payments is a very valuable use case. It's important. But what we're building is much more about decentralization, and it's about, you know, giving communities true ownership over their online spaces in a way that's impossible in traditional tech. Yeah, I see Case nodding in the background because that's the work she's done for the last bunch of years. And that's why she's here in blockchain, is because she's fought the battle in Web 2 for a long time and realizes that it's lost and we need to go reestablish a new battlefield and win that one first.
Yeah, it's a huge it was a huge abstraction on human scale design, and it was boring.
Yeah.
So yeah, see ya.
I think we're gonna see like on that topic of like, yeah, what should be a smart contract versus what should be, you know, like a whole app chain. I think we're gonna see a lot of exploration in that whole space. I think a common pattern we'll see is like people will write a smart contract or protocol on Juno and get like product market fit. And once they get to a certain scale, they'll like spin it out into like an app chain. And like, I mean, I'm excited for a newer, more stable version of the Cosmos SDK, but I've been building in the Cosmos SDK for quite a long time. And there's been so many breaking changes. And I really, really like with CosmWasm that it's nice and stable. Like you just upgrade WASM D and you don't have to like touch all this like other like dependencies, and it's very simple. And it is worth mentioning that there's also a new version of CosmWasm coming out called TWASM, which allows you to basically create contracts that schedule begin blockers and end blockers. And so I think we're just seeing this whole space of really interesting ways you can build, you know, app specific blockchains.
Yeah, actually, I keep thinking the more and more I learn about this particular space, the more that like the software projects that are acting more like cellular organelles, like from a more biological systems perspective, like just thinking about encoding proteins, like you have a start and a stop codon, you have identifier proteins in the phospholipid bilayer part of the cell that are identifying whether a packet can go through. There's like kind of an automated security, and when a like virus comes in and attacks the system, it doesn't destroy the whole system. There's like kind of more of a gradient, like we were talking about on the walk this morning, that it's not like a 1 or a 0 anymore. And that more natural system means that you don't necessarily have to have like perfection, but you do have like enough coverage that like the faults are not as catastrophic. It's like a more biological security method.
Well, we need to get Ethan on this sometime and talk about it.
That would be great.
Yeah, we were thinking. Well, we already have quite a big wish list of people we need to get on the show in order to talk about this stuff. But it would be quite interesting to kind of talk about the different levels of this stuff, because I think what you're talking about to some level is also about like high level code versus low level code, right? At some fundamental level, it's like what level of abstraction do you need to is appropriate for your use case, which is different depending on what you're building, right?
Yeah, and if you're not familiar, you can always kind of beta test it and build it in an environment that's like does some of it for you until you get the ropes like safely, and then you can like spin that out. I think that's a really, really interesting place because it's almost like it's some cases it could be like a development environment with like pre-made modules, and on the other case like it's more like of a sustainable growth. And I think also someone here in Portland that I tried to get to join at some point, like just to hang out, was Ward Cunningham, who made the first wiki. He's been doing really interesting work. One of the first wiki that he made, wiki is like Hawaiian for quick. So it's just a quick way to jot down ideas that him and his friend group had about Christopher Alexander's like a pattern language. And then that got turned into like a larger system. And the second person to contribute to that was one of the translators of like one of the popular versions of the DAO-DAO chain. So he used like Taoist principles to inform wiki software development. And then that ended up like being the foundation of Wikipedia. But I'd love to, yeah, there we go. So yeah, when I discovered that book, obviously huge deal. But to be able to hang out with someone that had made software deliberately based on those principles, to write notes about those principles, really interesting and meta. But I really like one thing he said where on a wiki, if you click something and it's a red link and it says not found, it doesn't say error 404, it says,
right.
Do you want to make one? So it turns every error into an opportunity. I love that system that like grows more out like this, like a little bit more rhizomatically than like a blog post that you can make and then it dies.
Yeah, I think like smart contracts with CosmWasm and native modules will just continue to play together, you know, and they're going to become composable in really important and very big ways. Like people will be able to launch a chain and just be like, we want awesome DAO tooling and just take DAO out, or we want a swap and they can, you know, fork Wasm swap, or and then like as it becomes easier to write native modules, like that's going to open up a whole host of amazing possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also something that I sort of did earlier where I sort of said, oh, is it developers who just want payments out of the box, or is it developers that want to specifically work on these systems that have kind of self-sovereignty and whatever built in? And like, I guess maybe they're not the same problem, but actually everything has payments built in, right? Because either it's such a fucking cliche, but you're the product or you're paying for something, right? That's life. And you know, especially in terms of micropayments, it's like easy to understate how hard micropayments are in Web 2, both in terms of like what you're paying to a centralized bank, but also like how you even get that set up securely in the first place. Like if you worked for a large software company or an enterprise software company selling to people and you've had to set up payments, it's fucking insane. You have to like take weeks of dev time to get it secure and audited and blah, 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 blah. And in Cosmos, crypto in general, it's quite hard to fuck up, you know? And having that high level abstraction around payments such that you can build a product, sell people stuff with money, and you can do it in a weekend is insane. So maybe those two developer communities are actually the same thing, because what we're talking about is how can we build things that the flow of money is okay. Maybe it's going to be an oligarchy. It's not going to be perfect, but if you're a person who's engaging the system as a builder, you can actually get paid, right? But I also saw a question in the chat with, will IBC become the standard in crypto? Like, I have a thought on this, which is I feel like even if Cosmos doesn't make it, the thing that's most likely to make it from Cosmos is IBC. And I think for a lot of the reasons that Amber, you know, was talking about there in terms of the structure it encourages. But, you know, I wonder what you folks think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And let me just add something real quick. You made a good point about IBC and then also about developers getting paid. I think Juno exists as this experimentation point, and we mentioned that people might take the apps they built on Juno and spin them off. How does airdrops as a thing become sustainable? If we built a sustainable machine for experimentation and allowing people to spin apps off and encouraging them to do so, they will contribute back to the infrastructure that made that happen. And like, this is something that is enabled by IBC. Anyway, sorry, that was a point I wanted to get in. Amber.
Yeah, this is a super amazing topic because I didn't realize until now how much this stuff connected. The whole last year I was studying micropayments with the Mozilla Foundation Fellowship, and going from like the inventor of micropayments, which was actually, I believe, Ted Nelson in 1960 wrote an article about micropayments, and that you could have fractional money and you could deliver it to people on a page. So you could say, I wrote an essay, and when someone quotes that on another web page, it will track it and provide a micropayment back to me. So you can break all these things up. And then he had like a Xanadu and he had all these things, and it was a total mess. I mean, there's a couple different things that were weird about micropayments when they first started, that like this one guy who was like a really big fan of Paul Erdős wrote this mathematical essay that was like, I am proving that micropayments aren't economically feasible, or they're only going to be relegated to this little section of payments in reality. And I was reading that and trying to think, like, is that really true? Like, could you have a sustainable ecology that is based on micropayments? And I think it might be something in addition to. And this paper was, of course, written before like divisible currencies and tokens and things like that. But as kind of a pure mathematician, he was well aware of divisibility. And so he kind of pretended that that was going to be the thing, and we can try and do it. The foundation that I thought got fairly close to it is the Interledger Foundation, but they never made any wrappers or any test like Lego blocks to actually put this stuff together. So if you wanted to use it, it would just be a super uphill battle of understanding their documentation and all of the, the culture of that ecosystem, and then rolling your own solution. I think like some banks in Japan have done it, but for like a mere mortal that is not a banking place in Japan to be able to do that, it's just really, really hard. And I really admire people that work on protocols most of all, because when email came out, you could have an AOL account and email somebody with a Gmail account, and you can still get the message. And the whole point about like the indie web movement that came out was like, hey, why can't I message you on Facebook and you receive it on Twitter? Why isn't there a communication protocol? And then same, like there's a money protocol kind of, which is Swift, which allows you to send messages that say you'll transfer money. But it's not this like composable programmatical thing that could be included in every basic like system and object. And I think that's really exciting. It's like finally I think it's a hard thing when you make a protocol, you don't understand like the human element and how people need to use it, and how they can't become an expert and provide their stable business at the same time. So actually make it like part of something else to do in a weekend is where it needs to be. Like it turns something more into like Photoshop, which is still hard to use and a power tool, but you can really do something with it without having to know all of the math behind the scenes to make those objects.
And now we've got Starport and CW20 tokens, and we can just like make micropayments and exchange them over to this much larger network over IBC. I think IBC is going to become the interoperability protocol, but of course I'm biased. But I think even if you look beyond like Cosmos SDK chains, we're starting to see like the first amount of traction. Maybe Jack can like provide more context on this, but there's an IBC substrate module that's like in the works, and I have a friend that works at a parachain, and they're like, it's like very high priority for them to like add support for IBC, because they just see there's this huge ecosystem that's emerging, and it's kind of like a snowball rolling down the hill. Like the bigger and bigger the snowball gets, the more momentum it has. Like, after like Terra joined, for example, like there was all this other momentum for others to join. And as soon as we get the first like non-IBC chains, like Polkadot parachains, Near Protocol has a bounty for IBC support. Harmony has a team that's working on adding IBC support to Harmony. Like the more chains that join the network, I think the more it becomes the internet of blockchains and not just the Cosmos.
Yeah, I think that what differentiated IBC from ILP is that we actually built the network first. Like ILP built a gorgeous protocol. I remember looking at it and it was like, how can we compete against this? They're way ahead of us. And like what they never did was expand beyond Ripple. They never tried to build a network. And I have no idea why they didn't do it. Zaki, who's kind of my mentor, spent a lot of effort working with the ILP team to try to help them launch that and to help them like get it networked, and they never did. And like that opened up the door for us to be able to do it, which is just wild.
I mean, I think though, if I could throw a slight bit of shade at IBC, I think the only thing that maybe could be a bit better, and I think we'll have to get better over time, is how addressability works in the interchain. Because at the moment, the primitives in the interchain, and actually this is one of the noddiest conversations I've had with Ethan a while ago, was about like, well, hang on, like how for your average user, we need to get to a point of addressability primitives, and how do we get to those? What layer of the stack are we talking to make that work for the average user? Because if we're talking about something we can implement at the top of the stack as just a protocol layer on top of it, then happy days, we can do that now, make $1 trillion, retire. However, if it's actually super hard and low level, then we probably should start like working on that soon. And if so, like what primitives are we going to need to use, and are they going to be in the SDK itself? Are we going to assume that Cos and WASM is going to be the lingua franca when we build it there, or like, where does this work need to happen? Because I spent years of my life in linked data, and Meow spent years of his life taking the piss out of me, but I did believe in linked data, and I still do believe in it as a really fundamentally clever idea that works. And that's like addressability taken to the nth degree, right? But the things that came out of linked data, like URIs, URLs, email addresses, all that kind of stuff, is why Web 2 worked, right? And why it works so well for the average user for so long. So at the moment, we've basically got like wallets, chain ID, a few other things.
I mean,
what other primitives do we need?
I'm very interested to work with you on this. We should potentially work together on this, because my thought on this is we need DNS for Cosmos, and that helps fix a lot of these addressability issues, and we can build the rest of the pieces around it. We need human readable information, names for these chains that maps to a bunch of machine readable information, and then we can use that to negotiate connections between smart contracts, use that to build wallet infrastructure on top of, and use that as a base of trust to ensure that no one's like faking a chain ID or doing dumb stuff like that in some of these like more advanced hacks that we're going to see as IBC grows. I think the chain naming service needs to live on the hub. I think that the easiest way to implement this would be with DIDs, or decentralized identifiers. There's some folks who are looking to use an IPLD spec to do this. And DeFray, I'm very interested to chat with you about your experience with linked data, because I'm currently trying to negotiate this bike shed, and I don't know what color it needs to be. And I don't care, but I do know what it needs to look like, and that's where I care.
It just needs to be unique. This is the thing. But the thing is, like, it just needs to be unique is like one of those problems in computer science where you're like, great, good one. Thanks for saying the obvious thing. Now, how many years do you want to spend implementing it in, and in which way?
Cosmos Hub. Cosmos Hub becomes the home of the chain naming service that knits together and supports the IBC network. It is the coolest and best vision for the Cosmos Hub that exists, I think, and it will enable routing, complex. Later, guys. Very good to see you all. It will enable routing. I have massive FOMO, Jake. Just huge FOMO. That looks like some of the most fun I've had in a while.
The coolest hacker house happening right now. Like there's the Juno projects here. It's pretty exciting.
Amber is probably the coolest person I met at Cosmoverse Lisbon. And I remember after I talked to her, I went and looked her up. It was like, oh, she's way more badass than I had any idea. She's great. I'm really glad you guys are working together. An Excel backend. Oh my God.
I mean, in some ways, that we wouldn't have been able to be downed in the way we did this week, right? If we just stuck it all in Excel. So
Google Sheet.
Google Sheet.
Big Google Sheet. I remember a friend of mine once worked for a large data processing company, and they were brought in to do a data pipeline, like refactor or something, for they weren't a bank, but it was something like insurance or betting. Like it was a lot of money moving around. And they were like, okay, can you show us what data pipelines you got in place? This was only a few years ago. So they were like, Apache Spark or something like that. They were assuming to see. And it was a massive set of connected Google spreadsheets. Like that was handling like gigabytes of data a day and like payments. And they were like, yeah, we're just actually going to just like immediately back away from this project and no longer work with you. And we'll walk away from the whatever £1 million that was on the table, because they were like, we're going to just end up in front of a regulator given how messed up this is. But it was they running the whole thing off Google Sheets, apparently. It was just totally insane. Like when the engineers saw it, like the CTO of the tech lead or whatever who was assigned to it, like called up the CTO and was like, get us out of this project immediately. We're going to end up like, there's no good way. This doesn't end well. There's no way we can fix this mess they're in. So in conclusion, yeah, we're not going to replace a blockchain with an Excel sheets, but thanks for the idea, RB. Whenever you get introduced to an Excel application, it's time to nope out of there. Yeah. But then what do you think, Jack, about like whether or not it's possible to do like progressively decentralized, because this is the problem, like global uniqueness fundamentally like locks up against decentralization. Like do you think we have any strategies for getting around that at the moment that seem viable to you, other than like putting a single source of truth on a hub, which is essentially what DNS does in Web 2 or any of the other systems that kind of work in that way, where they're still addressing a graph, but they have a source of knowledge somewhere as a meta graph on top of it?
I think that, yeah, we need to use a decentralized system to host this data in a centralized way. Like the hub, like I don't see any way of getting around having a single source of truth to enforce global uniqueness. That's it's a really hard problem. The Agoric guys keep telling me about something called pet names, and they're way smarter than I am, so they might be right. But I think that this is something that should live on the hub.
I mean, I'm also curious about whether there's something in CRDTs that could help with this, but obviously those are mainly designed for conflict resolution rather than uniqueness. So, if something's arbitrarily unique, but it's still at the end of a Merkle tree, it doesn't help you actually say, what is that thing? Like nobody is going to reference you by a Git commit, are they, for the same reason? Because it may be globally unique, but it's not useful because it's not human readable, right?
Yeah. Shout out to whoever on this stream can toss a link to the pet names paper in the chat so that we can take a look at it. It does feel like there's something with CRDTs, but it's not clear. I think that one way to help deal with the centralization of having this data on the Cosmos Hub is to have interchain queries and to be able to mirror that data across a couple of different zones and have it sort of in the same way DNS relies on a huge series of caches. Like that's one way to do this sort of caching of this data. But having a single source of truth to update it, and I think the hub with its sort of credibility of being the first blockchain in the network, the focus of the team on governance and these sort of organic systems, like I think we can figure out a way to make that be the application that sort of like gives the Cosmos Hub the value that it deserves.
Yeah, it's also interesting you mentioned caching, because obviously that's like the bane of all of these dereferencing systems. Eventually, like you get screwed by the cache, right? And we launched name service, which is super simple, like token bearer lookup, right? Which, because of the way Bec32s work, you can then say any chain you're on, you can say, is there a name for this? And you can call an API. But at the moment, that's only Web 2 because we don't have interchain queries yet. So you can't say, okay, ask it, arbitrary data, is there an owner for this that lives on any chain? But also, as we've had services looking to integrate with it, because primarily it's a address book, right, to be used by other smart contracts, we found that as soon as you build any non-trivial solution on top of it, you end up having to cache really quickly because of performance reasons. Because fundamentally we're not Apache Cassandra, and most average users are used to the kind of speed and user experience that you get from these large web scale projects, you know, to use the MongoDB meme from 10 years ago, projects from, you know, large Silicon Valley startups that they're kind of used to. And, you know, from a user experience point, that kind of comes back to the question of like, sometimes it's hard and sobering to remember how early we are in terms of the technology and the speed and the adoption, and how far we need to go to like provide the user experience I think all of us would like to see, right?
I think, you know, for me, I enjoy being early in this. It gives my work meaning in a way that I don't think it would have if I worked in a more legacy industry where things were more figured out. You know, we have to kind of web scale. Everyone knows we should post that terrible video.
I know the one you mean, with the little the line drawing things where it goes, but this is web scale.
Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. Yep.
Shit. Now I need to go. The update on this node is 5 hours in and still cranking. So hopefully I'll just keep watching, and if it happens while you guys are still on, I'll hop back in and we can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go
make
sleep
some
in
moves
about
on it.
20 minutes or so. So I'm kind of wondering now whether this is going to be, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to see beautiful blocks, or whether it's going to happen before I go to sleep. Yeah, it's more like a Mac OS X beach ball at this point, isn't it?
It is beach ball a little bit.
Just pure beach ball.
Yeah, it's about
a
the
beach
sound
ball
level.
that's going to recover though, like, because
Yeah, it is.
It's gonna wait it out.
Yeah.
Hey, all right, I'll wrap up here. Okay, I have
the chat. I feel it's like I feel like there's a lot of signs and things happening, and we're all tired.
Yeah.
So I
we'll
have my mom and a friend in town, so I got a job.
Cool. We'll think about wrapping it up there, and then yeah, thanks for everybody who's joined us on the stream, and I guess we're gonna see Juno alive at some point, hopefully, right?
We absolutely will. Like, Juno will live again as soon as the invariant checks finish.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Catch you guys soon.
See you guys later.